If you ever hear something breathing inside your tent while you're outside, don't open it. This story, known as The Tent That Breathed, is a chilling reminder of that rule. It comes from a group of friends who went camping near an old forest, a place with a dark reputation for missing hikers. They figured those were just stories, local legends to scare tourists away. They set up their camp, a small circle of tents, built a fire, and spent the evening sharing jokes and ghost stories, completely unaware they were about to star in one of their own. As the night grew deeper and the fire dwindled to glowing embers, everyone turned in. Around 3 a.m., the time when the veil between worlds is said to be at its thinnest, one of the friends, a guy named Lise, woke up. Nature called. He quietly unzipped his tent, stepped out into the frigid air, and made his way to the edge of the woods to do his business. The forest was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. The only sound was the crunch of leaves under his feet. After a minute or two, he turned back towards the camp, and that's when he froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. In the faint moonlight, he could see his tent, but it wasn't still. It was moving. The nylon fabric was slowly, rhythmically expanding and contracting, almost like a giant lung taking a slow, deep breath. Inhale and exhale. The sight was so unnatural, so utterly wrong, that his mind struggled to process it. It had to be a prank. It had to be his friends, David and Mike, messing with him. He crept closer, his footsteps now silent on the damp ground. He whispered their names. David? Mike? Is that you? Silence. The only answer was the steady, rhythmic movement of his tent. A wave of irritation mixed with his fear. This wasn't funny. Guys, come on, cut it out. He hissed, his voice trembling slightly. Still nothing. The breathing continued, slow and deliberate. He could almost feel the air being pushed out with each exhale. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, his mind racing through every logical explanation. The wind? No, the air was dead still. An animal? What kind of animal breathes like that? And how did it get in his tent without a sound? His frustration finally boiled over. He decided to call their bluff. Taking a deep breath of his own, he lunged forward, grabbed the zipper, and yanked it open in one swift, aggressive motion. He was ready to yell at his friends, to catch them in the act. But the tent was empty. His sleeping bag was just as he'd left it, his backpack sitting in the corner. There was nothing inside, no person, no animal, nothing. A cold dread, far colder than the night air, washed over him. The movement had stopped the instant he opened the tent. It was completely still now. He felt foolish, but also deeply unnerved. Maybe he was just tired, his eyes playing tricks on him in the dark. Shaking his head, he tried to laugh it off, convincing himself it was all in his head. He stepped inside the tent, turning to zip it closed behind him, desperate to get back into the warmth of his sleeping bag and forget the whole thing. But as the zipper sealed him inside, he heard it again. That same slow, deep breathing. And this time, it was coming from right behind him, just outside the thin nylon wall of the tent. He was trapped. Luis has never, ever gone camping again. To this day, he refuses to talk about what happened after he heard that breathing, or what he might have seen through the fabric of the tent that night. He's one of the lucky ones who made it out of that forest. Others weren't so fortunate. The scariest screams are the ones you hear with absolute, gut-wrenching clarity, but nobody else does. Imagine this. You're all alone, deep in the wilderness, miles from civilization. The kind of quiet that's so profound, you can hear your own heartbeat. That's exactly where Danielle was. She was an experienced camper, seeking solitude in a remote national park, a place known for its breathtaking beauty and unnerving silence. She had set up her tent, built a small fire, and was just starting to drift off to the sound of crickets when it happened. Midnight. The air was still and cold. Suddenly, a scream tore through the night. It wasn't distant or muffled. It was visceral, blood-curdling, and so terrifyingly close, it felt like it was coming from inside her own chest. It was the sound of pure, undiluted terror. A woman's voice, desperate and raw. Danielle's heart hammered against her ribs. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run. She scrambled out of her tent, leaving everything behind, and sprinted through the dark, tangled woods, guided only by the faint glow of her phone screen. Her lungs burned, branches whipped at her face, but she didn't stop. The only thought in her mind was to reach the ranger station she passed on her way in. After what felt like an eternity, she burst through the door of the small, dimly lit station, gasping for breath. A lone ranger, a man with a weathered face and tired eyes, looked up from his desk, startled. "I heard a scream." Danielle panted, her voice trembling. "Out there, in the woods, a woman." She sounded like she was in serious trouble. The ranger listened patiently, his expression unreadable. He let her finish, his gaze steady. Then he spoke, his voice calm, almost disturbingly so. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you're the only camper registered in this section tonight. No one else has reported hearing anything. Are you sure about what you heard?" "Yes, I'm positive," she insisted, her panic turning to frustration. "It came from over there," she said, pointing vaguely back into the darkness. North of the old creek bed. The ranger just stared at her for a long moment. Then he said something that made the blood freeze in her veins. "Mom, that area of the park you're pointing to, it's been closed to the public for 15 years. Danielle's mind reeled. Closed? But she had heard it so clearly. She described the scream again, the direction, the chilling echo. As she spoke, she saw the color drain from the ranger's face. His calm demeanor shattered, replaced by a look of dawning horror. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The direction you're describing? That's the exact location where a hiker went missing years ago. A young woman. They searched for weeks, found her backpack, but never found her." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "You're not the first one. Every year, right around this time, someone comes in here just like you. Always someone camping alone. They all report the same thing." He looked past Danielle, out into the impenetrable blackness of the forest. "It's always the same scream. Always from the same spot. And they always hear the same two words, over and over again." He met her eyes, and in them, she saw a fear that mirrored her own. "Help me." If you ever see someone walking through the woods at night without a flashlight, hide. This isn't just a campfire story. It's a warning. A few years back, two brothers, let's call them Alex and Ben, decided to go camping for a weekend. They picked a secluded spot they knew well, right by a calm, glassy lake, miles away from any city lights. The first night was perfect. They made a fire, roasted marshmallows, and shared stories under a canopy of stars. Everything felt completely normal, completely safe. They eventually put out the fire and zipped themselves into their tent, drifting off to the sound of crickets and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. It was around 2 in the morning when Alex woke up. He wasn't sure why at first. It was that strange, instinctual feeling that something was wrong. He laid there, listening, and that's when he heard it. Not a sound, but the absence of sound. The crickets had gone silent. Everything was unnervingly still. He nudged his brother, Ben, awake. Ben was groggy and annoyed, asking what was wrong. Alex just whispered for him to listen. Ben sat up, and together they peered through the mesh window of their tent. What they saw froze the blood in their veins. A man was walking through the trees at the edge of their campsite. But something was fundamentally wrong with this picture. The moon was just a sliver, casting deep, dark shadows everywhere. It was a moonless, pitch-black night. By all logic, they shouldn't have been able to see anything more than a vague silhouette, if that. Yet, they saw this man with an unnatural clarity. It was as if he was faintly glowing from within, emitting his own pale, eerie light. He moved slowly, deliberately, with a disturbing silence. His feet made no sound on the dry leaves and twigs that littered the forest floor. He walked right past their campsite, not even 10 feet from their tent. They could see his face perfectly. It was stiff, like a mask, and his eyes were wide open, staring straight ahead. He never blinked, not once. His gaze was fixed on some point in the darkness, and he just kept walking, a silent phantom gliding through the woods. Alex and Ben didn't breathe. They didn't move a muscle. They were paralyzed with a primal fear they'd never known. It felt like an eternity before the man disappeared into the darkness on the other side of the trail. They didn't sleep for the rest of the night. They just sat there, huddled together, listening to every snap of a twig, waiting for the sun to rise. When morning finally broke, they packed up their gear in a frantic rush, their only thought to get out of those woods. As they were hiking back to their car, they ran into a pair of park rangers. Desperate for some kind of explanation, they recounted the terrifying encounter from the night before. They expected the rangers to be skeptical, to maybe laugh it off. But the look on their faces was anything but dismissive. One of the rangers looked at the other, his expression grim, before turning back to the brothers. What he said next is something they'll never forget. "That's impossible," the ranger said, his voice low. "No one should have been able to walk that trail last night. We found fresh mountain lion tracks all over this area this morning. A big one, and it was actively hunting. Anyone out there in the dark would have been its prey. There's no way they would have made it through." Alex and Ben just stood there, the reality of the ranger's words sinking in. The man they saw, he wasn't just taking a late-night stroll. He was walking through the hunting ground of a predator, completely exposed, without a weapon, without a light. And yet, he walked with no fear, no hesitation. It was as if the natural order of things didn't apply to him. As if the predator and the prey had a silent agreement, or perhaps the thing they saw was something even a mountain lion knew not to touch. Whoever or whatever that man was, he shouldn't have survived the night. And the chilling part is, maybe he didn't. Maybe he was never alive to begin with. Thanks for watching. If you have a story you think is stranger than this one, share it in the comments. And if you want more stories that will make you question what's real, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next.